It is a normal occurrence in game development for character storylines and/or tools to be cut from the game. The Batman Arkham franchise is no exception from this creative process. Batman Arkham has plenty of cut content, some well known and some more obscure. Today we are going to be exploring the cut content archive websites such as the Cutting Room Floor and the Arkham Wiki to find the cut content that I feel is interesting, and I think you will too. I hope you enjoy. In Batman Arkham Origins, during the events of the game, there's multiple times where we experience how people like the Joker and other thugs would see and describe Batman as some sort of demonic creature before he came better known. This skin, named the Worst Nightmare, was actually supposed to be a selectable skin, and I believe it would be unlocked by completing the Worst Nightmare challenges, where you would need to complete specific challenges in the game, such as completing a Predator section without using detective vision. This skin was sadly cut because apparently there was an issue with the suit that would lead to pretty serious issues such as deleting game saves. It is actually possible to use this suit, as there are mods for the game that allow you to play as Worst Nightmare Batman. I've left a link to this mod in the description, which was made by Icemage. In Batman Arkham Asylum, originally the lighthouse we can find in Arkham West was meant to be accessible. The plan was to have a massive bridge that connects the lighthouse to the island and was planned to be explorable. We can even see a rough sketch of how the player would be able to traverse the area. This was sadly cut due to the development team thinking the map was too big, which is funny as they would go on to release Arkham City a couple of years later, which was 5 times the size of Arkham Asylum's map. In Batman Arkham City, there is a woman that we meet that is a part of the League of Assassins that Batman has shared history with. Her name is Talia al Ghul, who helps Batman join the demon trials and is later on sadly killed by the Joker at the end of the game. Something interesting found in the files though is a Clayface model disguised as Talia, as if he is changing from Talia to his natural form, similar to this scene. Now I don't believe there's much known about the story around this character model and how close it was going to be in the final release, but my only guess is that this is a fake Talia outside of the theatre that could be created by Clayface, and that it was just a precautionary ruse so that if Batman was able to get to them before they got to the theatre, then Batman would be rescuing the wrong Talia, or that when they got to the theatre that this was the actual fake Talia waiting for him inside that morphs into the Clayface boss battle. Obviously this is pure guesswork, but the only thing Batman is probably hoping for is that this isn't a Clayface imposter Talia during this scene. Batman Arkham Origins apparently had a lot of cut content due to how limited the development time Warner Bros. Montreal had. It appears that some of this content can be seen in the gameplay demo that WB showed off in E3 2013. Around halfway through the demo, the video showcases Batman trying to defuse bombs around Gotham City. As he is locating them, we can actually see a train go past, which we all know did not exist in the final build of the game. Do you think this should have been added? In Batman Arkham Knight, we all know the last section of the game where we play as the Joker in the Batmobile, but did you know there was plans for a DLC that was for something very similar? From my understanding, the idea was that we would be in a dream sequence where the Joker is controlling the Joker Mobile once again, and the objective was to destroy as much of Wayne Tower as possible. The higher the damage, the more points you got, with the cost it would take to repair the damage displayed on screen also. After 5 minutes the game would end and Joker would send the bill to Wayne Enterprises with the expenses. Personally, it would be a fun game mode for the first couple of hours, but honestly I couldn't see myself playing it for too long, especially if it was just one map, so I don't really mind it was cut. In Batman Arkham Asylum, something that was brought up in an older video but is too interesting to skip, so I'll discuss it again. There is a villain that was cut very early on in the development of the game, and this villain was Mad Hatter. Although this character appeared in later Arkham games, according to the game's writer Paul Dini, the Mad Hatter was originally going to appear in the game where him and Poison Ivy would team up in the botanical gardens. In this boss fight, Batman would find himself trapped in a hedge maze, and while trying to escape, Poison Ivy would use her plants to slow Batman down. Apparently though, Rocksteady felt this idea did not fit the tone of the game, and in the final release, what was left was Mad Hatter's Picnic, which can be found in the Botanical Gardens, which is a riddle you can scan, but also could have been a nod to the original vision. It is kind of a shame not to have Mad Hatter in every Batman Arkham game, as he is a great villain with some great levels in my personal opinion. Although pretty short, I think they really stuck out, so working him into the main story would have been an interesting task. In Batman Arkham City, at the end of the game, we get a really cool section where Batman has to take on Clayface enemies with a sword. These are fairly light enemies that can go down in a single hit, making them not much of a threat, but more of a way to make taking down Clayface that bit harder. But there is an image in the files that shows a much bulkier version of these enemies, which makes me think that there was a plan to have a stronger version of these enemies, or this was the original look for the Clayface enemies. Maybe this enemy would take multiple hits, or have to be stunned before taken down, similar to the armored enemies. But I guess we'll never know. But let me know your thoughts. In Batman Arkham Asylum, Joker's outfit was meant to be very different to what we got in the final release. The design difference being Joker as a mad scientist, which was meant to coincide with Harley Quinn's nurse's outfit, but they probably felt it would make more sense if the Joker just wore his normal suit, as that is what he is wearing when he is first arrested. Another change from the final product is that Joker's smile was going to be cut into him, very similar to how Heath Ledger's Joker did in the 2008 movie The Dark Knight. Also, another significant change to Joker's appearance is in the final boss fight, where Joker has injected himself with Titan and turns into a muscular giant. But in the early stages of the game's development, there was an idea to have a skinny version of Joker, a somewhat spider-like design, but I believe they wanted Joker to match how the Titan chemicals affects everyone else, so that was cut. In Batman Arkham Knight, Sefton Hill, one of the founders of Rocksteady Studios, said in a pre-released interview that the explosive gel was only going to be used in context-sensitive areas and was not going to be chosen by the players on the gadget selection display. Thankfully, this was not changed from what we got in the previous games, as explosive gel is one of the core gadgets in my personal opinion in the Batman Arkham games, and it would be a weird change that really didn't need to happen, so thankfully they kept it in the final game. Also in Batman Arkham Knight, Rocksteady planned to have a pretty creative way to have an end credit scene. Usually in an end credit scene, the screen is pretty static, tending to be a black screen with white text, but Sefton Hill describes this interesting end credit scene in a Reddit post where he asks his fans of the franchise to ask him questions. A user on Reddit asks, "Okay, Sefton, did you know that you were being put into the intro of Arkham Knight in the diner, or was that a surprise to you?" Sefton replies, "We scanned a number of the team into the game to feature as civilians in this scene, and Mark K, one of our senior designers, chucked me into the game. It's a bit of an in-joke that I'm heading out of the diner, given I absolutely know what's about to kick off. We also had a combat level where you got to beat up the development team, which was great fun. I'm sure lots of people on the team enjoyed beating the crap out of me. This is perhaps one of the features I really regret us not having time to add to the game. The idea was that you would get to beat up the dev team in a combat level, part of the end credit sequence, and every time you knocked someone out, the game would go into slow-mo and tell you who they were, and what they did on the game. It would have been a New Game Plus only feature if we would have had time. Although this is not a big deal that was cut from the game, I still think it would have been super fun to have and a good reward for New Game Plus players. If you're enjoying the content so far and want to support me further, please consider becoming a YouTube member. Link in the description of this video where you can get a heap of benefits. In one of the promotional images for Batman Arkham Asylum, we can see Riddler's writing on the wall of his cell. Strangely though, instead of green paint like we normally expect to see, it is actually written in blood. The reason for this change would most likely be that Rocksteady and or Warner Brothers wanted to not risk getting a higher age rating, which could potentially lower the amount of sales if the game was 18 rated. In Batman Arkham Origins, it was pitched by the director of the game, Beanit Richer, that villains in Batman's Rogues Gallery would be playable in the open world. My guess is that they would have reused what they had for the challenge packs and Arkham Origins multiplayer, as they already had Joker and Bane from the multiplayer and Deathstroke from the challenge maps. Although this sounded like a great idea, I feel it would have been better for WB Montreal just to focus on the main parts of the game, as they had very little development time. Maybe in the future something similar like this could be implemented if another Batman Arkham game releases. In Batman Arkham City, Joker was apparently going to be playable, whether it be woven into the story similar to Catwoman's DLC or just for challenge maps. We can find proof of this in the Return to Arkham version of Batman Arkham City with footage from Wastelander 121, as the remaster uses a much older version of Batman Arkham City. My take is that they most likely just copied and pasted the code from the previous game, which is pretty common with most sequels. They could have also been planning to have another Joker exclusive pack, similar to Arkham Asylum's PlayStation version, but it's very hard to know without anyone at Rocksteady to confirm this. In Batman Arkham Origins, there was plans to have much bulkier gadgets than we got in the final release. WB Montreal thought it was a good idea to have bulkier gadgets, as Batman is only a few years into his career as a crime fighter, and it would make a lot of sense if these gadgets were not as compact as they were in Arkham Asylum or City, as they would be early prototypes. Honestly, I feel this was a missed opportunity to have something different and cool, like maybe the explosive gel needs to be held with two handles, or detective vision you need to put on goggles for it to work, similar to Catwoman. Although small details, I feel like this would have been cool to show that Batman is still in his early stages. Obviously this wouldn't change the game dramatically, but I feel like it's a shame not to have it. In Batman Arkham Knight, there were surprisingly a good amount of villains that were meant to be in the game that were cut. Black Mask was surprisingly one of them, where it seemed like he was originally going to appear in the main game, but instead was put into the Red Hood story pack. Prometheus, who is basically an evil version of Batman, whereas two criminal parents were gunned down by police in front of him, and from then on vowed to destroy the law, was apparently going to be in the game also. The third character that has a lot of cut content is surprisingly Victor Zsasz, who we previously fought in Batman Arkham City and Asylum. He actually has cut voice lines, which can be found in the files, but you can also check out Mr. Jag's unused dialogue video. But here are a couple of lines.
If you killed anyone tonight, tell me now.
It's hard to tell, Batman. So many cuts in my flesh. But I'm saving a place just for you.
There is also a very good theory video by K-Nerd, which discusses how the side mission may have looked like, and I have credited both videos below. Apparently the reason for Zsasz being cut from the game was due to Professor Pig's involvement. As they are quite similar characters with similar motives, it was believed that Rocksteady preferred to have a lesser known character to have their own side mission, rather than a character who has appeared multiple times before show up again. The only cameo we get from Zsasz is a brief appearance when Batman is searching for Barbara on the camera in the clock tower. It is a shame not to have Zsasz in the last Batman Arkham game, but it is hard to argue that removing Professor Pig's side mission would have been a good idea, as it is very well made in my opinion. In Batman Arkham Origins, the electric gloves that we are gifted by the Electrocutioner were planned to be quite different to what we got in the final game. In an early prototype, the shock gloves were a selectable gadget that Batman could equip. From my understanding, it looks like it could shoot projectiles and it was possible to do a ground slam. There's no information on how it would work and if there is any cooldown to stop this from being overpowered, but personally I like how the shock gloves work in the final game, so I'm glad they changed this for the full release. In Batman Arkham Knight, apparently in the early stages it was going to be possible to play as the Bat family in the open world. Robin, Nightwing and Red Hood all had their characters made for story packs, but never made it into the game due to time constraints. It is actually possible to access the open world with different characters using PC mods or glitches, but it is a shame there is nothing officially made for it. In Batman Arkham City, there is a voice actor credited as a voice of a character, but does not even have a line in the entire game. Nightwing is a character who never shows up during the main story or even in the DLC. The only time that Nightwing shows up during the game is if you go to the Riddler challenges. Strangely though, Quentin Flynn, who you may know as Raiden in Metal Gear Solid and Sheldon Lee in My Life as a Teenage Robot, was credited as the voice actor for Nightwing, even though he does not have a speaking role. You may think the reason for this was that he did the grunts of hitting or getting hit in the challenge maps, but these were actually done by Troy Baker. This leads me to believe that Nightwing had a greater involvement in the story of Arkham City, whether it be the main story or DLC. To make things worse, when Nightwing would finally receive lines to speak in the 2015 Batman Arkham game, Quentin would be replaced by Scott Porter for the role. All hope was not lost for Quentin in the Arkham universe, as he was assigned to voice Alberto Falcone in WB Montreal's Arkham Origins a couple years after Arkham City. In Batman Arkham Asylum, did you know there was supposedly going to be rain in the game? We can see clear hints to this, originally being planned to feature in the game. We can see the original cutscene when Batman is taking Joker to the asylum that it is raining, but we know in game, although it is dark and cloudy, there's no actual rain. But we can see even more evidence. With the outdoor guards wearing raincoats, we can assume that rain was not added to Batman Arkham Asylum due to technical issues with Unreal Engine 3 that Rocksteady were not able to patch out, or it may have been due to hardware limitations, as this game was released in 2009 during the era of PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360, which may have not been able to handle the rain effects at the time. We can actually see the rain effects in the Batman Arkham Asylum Return to Arkham remaster, which may mean that Rocksteady were able to finally execute their original vision using the more powerful hardware the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, or that it was easier to integrate using the power of Unreal Engine 4. In Batman Arkham Origins, Warner Bros. Montreal planned to have multiple weather effects in the game. One of these effects was to be whiteout, which would lower visibility to near zero, and the way to see would be only possible with detective vision. This was cut due to performance issues. In Batman Arkham Knight, there was going to be another enemy vehicle type called the Suicide Pursuit drone vehicle. From my understanding, this vehicle would attempt to drive into you and detonate explosives. There's no reason for this vehicle to why it was removed, but my only guess is that it may have been too easy to deal with, or there may have been an issue with them that was causing a bug that Rocksteady decided to remove. In Batman Arkham Asylum, apparently Rocksteady planned to have a lot more collectibles than they did in the final game. There was a plan to have Joker spray cans, Two-Face coins and Killer Croc scales. When you retrieved one of these collectibles, it would flip a tile revealing a larger picture, Once you collected all the spray cans, coins, or scales, it would reveal a larger picture of a gadget. Then you would have to go collect that equipment from the Batmobile or a hidden satellite in the Batcave. I definitely think it would have been cool just to have that bit more collectibles in the game, but honestly it's not the end of the world. But it is interesting to know what they originally planned to have. In Batman Arkham City, some of the early preview screenshots of the game actually use Batman's old face from Arkham Asylum. Maybe they planned to continue on with the same face from Asylum, but then later changed it. Personally, I think it was a good change, as I would say Bruce would look weirdly old for his age without his mask, so making him look younger for Arkham City was a good idea, I think. In Batman Arkham Origins, the final boss fight with Bane originally looked quite different to what we got in the end product. In the full release, we needed to hide around in vents and floor grates in order to sneak up behind Bane and force him to hit into the electric fence to do damage. In a picture that was taken very early on in development shows that Batman would be able to use vantage points and you would need power generators, then lure Bane into them for a takedown. It seemed like a good idea, but it sounded like it could have been very hit or miss. Let me know your thoughts. In Batman Arkham Knight, Batman was at some stage meant to get a fear dart gadget. Batman would be able to shoot a thug with the fear dart, causing the thug to freak out and become terrified, most likely making them collapse due to the fear, but that was just a guess. The reason for this fear dart gadget to be cut is unknown. In Batman Arkham Asylum, there was even more locations planned that were going to be added to the map. A really interesting location was called Chapel Rock, which was going to be separate from the island, but connected by a bridge. This was going to include an inmate's graveyard, crypts, a chapel, and an area labelled Twisted Willow. Apparently the Batcave would also be located underneath the island, but sadly it was cut similar to the lighthouse, either due to the size of the location or due to not having enough development time. It's definitely understandable why they cut it out, but I really wish we could have seen how it would have played out. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like and subscribe. Personally, I loved the idea of the lighthouse that was planned to be in Arkham Asylum, so I'm sad that we couldn't see a small in-game look of what it could have looked like. But let me know your favourite bit of cut content down below. That's all for now. My name is Fo, and Slan.